Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Bright Ideas Podcast. As always, I am your host, Trent Deersmith, and my job is to help you to shine a light on what is working or maybe not working in e-commerce. And to do that, I bring proven experts onto the show to share with you their specific body of knowledge and years of experience to help you make sure that you execute the tactics and the strategies that you should be executing in the right way. And you're going to get a kick out of this episode because we're going to be talking about how yours truly has made some mistakes and they have cost me a lot of money, and we're going to hopefully fix that. My guest this time around is a fellow by the name of Chris Mercer, who will introduce himself in just a minute. We do have a sponsor for this particular episode. This episode is brought to you by SEMrush, a tool that I'm sure all of you have heard of and has been around for a very long time, but they have a new tool that maybe you haven't heard of. And if you, like me, are an Amazon seller, this is a tool that you're going to want to pay attention to. It is called Sellerly, and it is a free A/B testing tool for Amazon listings that is powered by SEMrush, an award-winning team with more than 10 years of experience. As we all know, they've been around for a very long time. So what the heck is this tool for? Well, if you want to be successful on Amazon, obviously one of the key things you're going to be paying attention to is the conversion rate of your product listings. So this Sellerly tool allows you to test or rather split test the main elements of a product detail page. These elements being the title and the description and the price to find the best combination thereof. So you can run an unlimited number of tests, and each test lasts for 7 days, but you can discard them at any time if there's bad results. And by doing these tests, it will help you to make a more informed decision about what is the best combination of those key elements. And the coolest thing of all is the thing's totally free, so you have nothing to lose. And I would highly encourage that you go give it a shot and see if you can improve the conversion rate of your Amazon listings. All right, Chris, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for making some time. For the folks who don't yet know who you are, let's start there. Who are you?
Fair enough. Yeah, well, my name is Chris Mercer. I actually go by Mercer because there always tends to be another Chris in the room whenever I'm around. And I'm the co-founder of a company called measurementmarketing.io. And essentially what we do is teach marketers, marketing teams, and agencies how to know their numbers so that they can ultimately grow those numbers. And we do that through helping them learn tools that they already have access to, things that are free, like Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, Google Data Studio for dashboards, and even like things like Facebook Analytics now.
All right. So we were talking before we hit the record button on, what we were going to do to make this interview as impactful and useful as possible. And we concluded that my broken funnel is what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So the audience doesn't know what the hell I'm talking about. So let me give some quick background, and then we'll dive into it. So I have a webinar that I've been doing manually for months, and it converts exceedingly well to my house list. And I thought to myself, well, I wonder if I could turn this webinar into an evergreen funnel and drive paid traffic into it. So I set out putting together the tech stack to do all of that. And I hired an agency to create or buying the traffic from YouTube. So they created the ad video for me, and they created the campaigns for me. And they're actually an agency that I had on the show a number of months ago. And so we turned the on switch on, and for the first 3 weeks, it was awesome. I mean, I was adding 40, 50 leads a day to my email list, and I was selling enough of the stuff that I was offering on the webinar to offset the ad spend and actually generate a small profit on customer acquisition, which surprised the hell out of me. And so I said to them, all right, guys, we've got 3 weeks worth of data in the can. It's all good. Mash the gas pedal down. And the car promptly broke. I don't think we've had and I lost $2,000 that week alone.
Wow.
And I don't think we've had a conversion since. So I'm sitting here scratching my head thinking, well, what did I break?
Yeah.
Because somewhere this thing broke, because you don't go from this many conversions to none. And so we've got an opt-in page on my blog.
Okay.
We are using a form that drives traffic into a wonderful app called drive leads into an app called Campaign Refinery. And I just actually interviewed the founder of that in episode 270, I believe, because we talked that one of the great things about this app is how you can produce scarcity that lines up with when you've got an evergreen funnel. Everybody needs to have scarcity at just the right time. It makes it super easy to do that. So I'm able to get data there. There's a follow-up campaign driven by that app, and then we drive the traffic or the registrations go into EverWebinar, which is the software that we use to deliver the evergreen webinar. And between those three pieces of the tech stack, I thought I was getting pretty decent analytics in terms of, well, this is working and this is working. Oh, and then checkout happens in Infusionsoft. And so then checkouts just vanished. No more checkouts. And so now I need to figure out, I have not been able to fix it. So I'm at the point where I either got to turn it off and stop bleeding, or I've got to find a smarter way to figure out what went wrong. So Chris, help me out.
So number one, you're not alone. Most people that come to us when they're coming to measurementmarketing.io, it's because something like that has happened. Because measurement's not something that typically you start thinking about. Your first thing is like, let's get an offer and let's make sure the offer is working and we get the copy down, landing pages, and like you said, the tech stack, and just the fact that I can learn how to use Webinar Jam, right? Like, and you just get the basics in place and you're happy with that. And then your next stage is, okay, let's track the results. Typically, those come through the platforms for the most part. So most people start is Facebook says I caused this, or my bank account has this, or Infusionsoft says I got this many orders, right? Or Webinar Jam says I made this many sales. So you sort of have that, but the challenge with just doing that, and that's what you're running into now, is you've essentially built a machine. Like, I love that you use this car example. We talk about that all the time. Like, and that's what it was. It was a machine that was rolling down the road and kind of propelling the company forward. And then the trick is you didn't really know how that machine worked, and you sort of just kept going. And again, nothing, no harm, no foul. Like, everybody starts like this. You just didn't realize you're supposed to know that until it makes the big clunking sound. Then you're like, what's that? Somebody's like, oh, well, that's in the engine. You're like, what's an engine? Right? Now you're like, crap. Well, we got to pull over because the thing is smoking now. What's going on, right? Do we push it? Do we buy another card? Is this just a belt I got to replace? And it's a $5 item? Like, who knows? So the trick to measurement, right? That's what the whole idea of measuring your marketing is using platforms. And this is where Google Analytics just can't be beat, because right now you're relying upon what Facebook says, or what Webinar Jam says, or what Infusionsoft says, and ultimately what the bank account says, type of thing. And you've got these different versions of the truth of what's going on, and they're all right.
They don't all agree with each other either.
They don't all agree. That's 100% right. And the way to think about that, because that's hard for people to wrap their head around. They're like, well, if they're all looking at the same thing, well, I don't understand. Why are they telling me different stories? Because that's exactly what's going on. They tell you different stories, but they are 100% looking at the same thing. So the way you wrap your head around this is you think about it like a fairy tale. And imagine Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It's a story everybody's familiar with. Now, imagine that you were a detective trying to figure out what was going on, and you just talked to Goldilocks about what her version was. Then you just talked to Baby Bear. Then you just talked to Mama Bear. You're going to get distinctly different versions of that same story, right? When you put them all together, you kind of get an idea of what's going on. Analytics, Google Analytics, is the only thing that can do that, because it's the only thing that's got the entire viewpoint of everything when it's set up properly, and it does need to be set up properly. But when it is, it can see everything from the click coming in from Facebook all the way through going into the Campaign Refinery, right, becoming the new lead, going into the Webinar Jam, coming through into Infusionsoft and making that purchase. So it can see all of that. And if it can see all of that, you can then measure your stages. And now you know not just what the results were, but how you're getting those results. And then you'll start to expect they give you benchmarks, and you'll start to expect some normal numbers to show up. Like, for example, like land order cart is typically for most cold traffic stuff, like 8 to 12%, for most sort of like direct response style funnels, like traffic at scale. So it's like, if I see less than that, I know I have an issue. If I see substantially more than that, I probably just have a traffic source that doesn't scale. Right. And so you can start to measure that. And if something breaks, if you know how it's supposed to expect, the sound the engine's supposed to make, because of how engines work now, when you hit the gas and you start hearing something kind of where you go, whoa, let's take off. Okay, let's fix that. That's a belt we got to tighten up. Okay, now we can hit the gas, and then it works a lot better. So that's what analytics is really for. It's exactly the situation where you're in, and specifically paid media, because that's when it matters. If you're doing a lot of stuff through SEO on your own list, you're like, we sent a mail, didn't work. That's okay. How much did it cost to send an email? Nothing, right? But analytics could have told you how it was working, so that when you do your paid media, it makes it even better.
So do your best without the, we don't have a screen here that we're sharing or anything like that. Do your
Imagine
best.
if you will. There's a left-hand menu over here. Yeah.
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 Do your best to talk me through how I'm going to fix this.
So it is, I'm going to put this out front. Like, this is not something that's like, oh, great, just put some code on the pages and then bam, there's your answers, right?
Yeah.
The misconceptions around Google Analytics are many. The biggest one is, and this is how we started, was, oh, you just put code on the page and then there's analytics. And that is not at all how it works. And it took me a long, long time to figure that out. You put code on the page and it like turns it on, but it is not set up at all. And so it's just all this raw data that's coming in. And if you've ever gone to analytics, and I can already guess this answer is going to be, if you've ever gone to analytics and you've ever gone like, okay, like I've got no idea what I'm looking at or what any of this stuff means, and I'll come back to this in a few years. Like, that's what most people do. And that's because it isn't telling a story. It's a ton of information, right? It has a story in there, but you've got to hack into it and try to figure it out. And it's a pain, and nobody's going to do that. So you set up your analytics so it naturally tells a story. Now, how are you going to do that in your case? The thing I would recommend, and you're kind of at it, because do you have any analytics at all right now? Like, are you using Google Analytics? And
there's Google Analytics on my website, but it wouldn't be anywhere else.
Okay, so the very first thing that I would do if you want to do this right, and I mean like this is a ground up rebuild, because you're an opportunity here, right? Mm-hmm. Is you don't have any visibility at all into what's going on with Webinar Jam, other than Webinar Jam's truth, right? You see
correct,
but you don't have it in GA. And you need to be able to tie it in GA, because ultimately you want to tie it back to the Facebook ad that caused the webinar registration in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to tie that Facebook ad to the cause of registration. Did they show? Did they click on the buy button and see the page? Did they purchase? Analytics is the only thing that can tell you that, because it's the only thing that can supersede all of it. But you cannot just put the code on the pages. You cannot just put code in Webinar Jam, because if you do that, you're using different domains, right? And this is where it does get complicated, but it's necessary to think this through. So you've got your main domain, right? So we've got domain.com or offer.com, whatever your offer pages are. Then you've got Webinar Jam, which is all gendy.com domains, right? Yeah. So you're doing your replays and your live links and everything else. They will absolutely send that stuff to Google Analytics. But to Google Analytics, it's coming from a completely different domain, so it thinks it's a totally different user. So you break what they call break sessions. Yep. So now you've got two users showing when really it's just one user. And if you're like, what's going on with Facebook? It's like, I don't know, they showed up and they registered. And then you're like, okay, well then what happened? It's like nobody ever showed up for the webinar after that. And you're like, okay, well that's impossible. But analytics, it just wasn't set up right. It lost its connection. So what I would recommend is actually backing up a little bit from analytics and going in the Tag Manager first. And so, do you use Tag Manager at all right now?
Not one bit.
Tag Manager is your absolute next thing to take a look at. So here's how to think about it. So Google Analytics does three things natively. When you put the script on the pages, just by itself without doing anything else, it does these three things. One is it collects its information. So it collects things like page views, right? What page people are on. It also stores that information. And that's really all Google Analytics is. It's a big, giant database that stores behaviors of users. That's all it is, right? Mm-hmm. Just storing the behaviors. Then it reports on those behaviors. And that's where all those little reports that are in Google Analytics do. Only one of those things does it do really well, which is store information. It's not really great at collecting details. It's not really great at reporting details, right? So what Google has done is they've created two other platforms that do those things even better. So Tag Manager is there to collect information. And that's what it does incredibly well. So yes, it will collect things like page views, but it will also collect information like what button they're clicking on. It'll click if they clicked on the buy button on Webinar Jam, right? For example, it'll click if they showed up for Webinar Jam. It can tell you if they showed up and watched it for 30 minutes, right? It can do an amazing amount of stuff.
Nice.
Did they interact with the video VSL that I had that was, the replay of the webinar? It'll do that sort of stuff. So what happens is going from this little page view details that you can get from analytics kind of natively, and you can custom code analytics to get all this stuff too, but you got to custom code it. And if you change stuff, you got to get the developer again to custom.
Yeah, no thanks.
Pain. Tag Manager, it's like 15 minutes. And you go to Tag Manager and you essentially sort of train this tool to say, well, when you see somebody watching this video on this page or showing up for this webinar, I want you to fire 45 minutes in when the button pops, right? You could actually say when the button pops, I want you to go ahead and report back to analytics that the button popped. And then when they click on the button, I want you to tell analytics that the button was just clicked on. And then when they purchase, I want you to tell analytics that the purchase happened. And now analytics is kind of in listen only mode. It just listens and stores the details. But the important part is it's getting all of those details. And this is how you understand the how journey, right? Because when it comes to numbers, you need two types of numbers. One is the results numbers, but then there's the how numbers. How am I getting those results? And that's what Tag Manager will give you that visibility into. It does not take long. There's a tiny learning curve to it for sure, but pretty quickly, I mean, it's made for marketers. It's made for marketers to use to get these exact answers, this exact information. So Tag Manager is in control of all that. And Tag Manager is what you can say, hey, Tag Manager, I want you to tell Google Analytics that my site and Gendy is basically the same thing. Please treat them identically. And it will totally do that. And now analytics, instead of doing this thing where it was separate, is they're all combined. And now those users are all tracking from Facebook all the way to purchase, because analytics is storing them like that because Tag Manager is in charge. And Tag Manager, again, 1,000 times better at collecting than Google Analytics is. So that's the first thing, is get Tag Manager in place, get it, and you can put it into Webinar Jam. We use Webinar Jam ourselves. So we've done this exact same thing. And you can track from Facebook to Webinar Jam opt-in to when they showed, to when they watch the replay, to when they purchase. And all of those details get sent into Google Analytics. Then you can start doing things like funnel builds in Google Analytics, and you can see exactly where your funnel is and what it looks like, all the different stages and steps. And then ultimately you'll start to get used to, okay, here's what good looks like. Here's how a good performing funnel looks like. And then all of a sudden you see your registration rate go from, let's say, 35%, and all of a sudden it goes down to 5%. You're like, that's weird. If it goes to 78%, that's also weird, right? Where that's a traffic source that just probably isn't scaling. Or your show rates go from, 40% down to 10%. You're like, okay, like that's what's going on. Everything went well except for this one step. But now it's 100% apparent. Right? And it's not I don't know what happened. Let's just try to work on the offer or the headline or figure out maybe the ad changed. It's here's where it was, right? And you can use that same mechanism, that same mindset of how am I achieving this result all the way at the start of the ad, technically, to say, here's the impressions, here's the people that click through to the ad or to the site off of Facebook at that point. And then how many people opted in, showed, purchased, et cetera. But you start way over here because the problem may have been that it was sent to a ton of people impression-wise, and then just nobody clicked, which is an issue, right? Or it's nobody clicked because it was sent to a 10% as many, and they just cost you a ton, right? And now you would know that, being like, wow, Facebook just raised their rates. Like that's where it broke. It broke at the beginning. So maybe it's not that the machine stopped working. It was that stops didn't go into the machine in the first place. And so when you look at those each individual steps, that's how you can tell that. And I'll give you kind of a 5-step framework to kind of very, very high level work this into your system. First step is planning. It's the thing that everybody skips, right? Everybody does because you don't think about it. Now you do, because you have this little bit of pain. You're like, whoops, okay, we got to make sure next time we cover this. So planning is 3 main things. Number 1, what questions do I want to know? And you write down all the different questions you're going to want to know. And you want to know all of the different steps of that journey, of that funnel, right? What are the customers needing to do? What are the behaviors and what are the drop-offs? Second thing, once you have those questions written out, you say, okay, what information will I need in order to get those answers? That will tell you the stuff you need to set up Tag Manager to make sure it's tracking, or at least to make sure the analytics is storing properly, however you do that. Then the third thing, we're still in planning. We haven't even done anything to no tracking scripts or anything yet. That third thing is once you've got the question that you want to know, you get the information to get the answers. It's what actions am I going to take based on this answer? And this is where you start marketing role playing. And you're starting to go, okay, if I know that my opt-in rate is typically 35, let's say 30 to 40%, and then it drops down to half that, I know I'm going to do this. Or if it goes double that, it probably means something like this. And now you're practicing your muscle up here, right? Before you even start doing anything, you start practicing it. Sometimes what will happen is you will get to a point where you're like, I actually don't know what I would do with that information. And I'll give you an example of that. We had a client, another popular podcaster, who was setting up tracking, and they were tagging their traffic in email. So we're showing them a tag the traffic coming in from email. And they tagged it to the point where they were in the paragraph. They knew what paragraph somebody was clicking on. And that's how they were tagging it, right? But you can get very specific. And so I asked them, I said, well, let me ask you this. Before you go through all the work of setting that up, because they have it was part of their plan, right? And so I said, well, before you do that, what will you do if this report in 6 months says, hey, paragraph 3, like paragraph 3 is amazing. Yeah. What are you going to do with that? They're like, well, I don't know. I don't know what that would lead to. I said, exactly, because it sort of doesn't have a meaning, right? You can't actually take an action on that, because what is a paragraph? Was it a 1 line, which just happened to be shorter? Like, you have no idea. So think about, and they go, okay, you know what? There's an example of, I can't take an action with this, so let's not track it. That was just tracking for tracking's sake. Instead, they start focusing on, okay, PS links for sure. We want to know if those are working. We want to know if image versus text links. And I'm like, perfect. Like that makes sense because that's something you can test and see, are the images getting clicks? And if those clicks are leading to sales, awesome. But are the images getting clicks too quick where the email didn't do its work because they didn't read anything? And now they're coming to the offer and they're not prepped. And it was just curiosity. And now I'm not actually closing, even though my click-through rates are better. You can measure that in analytics when you tag stuff, right? So that's just an example of the planning. And that's the first sort of pillar of measurement marketing. So you plan out those things, then you do your build. And hopefully in the planning stages, you can kind of get an idea of like, oh, I can understand how the build will be a little bit better now because I'm already sort of role playing how I'm going to use this thing. So Tag Manager gets easier to build, analytics gets easier to build because you understand kind of what it's for, you understand the end result, you understand what your actions you're trying to get from it. Finally, you go into the reporting, and the third step I should say is reporting. And that's where, again, you can use Google Analytics. So they've got built-in funnel reports that you can set up. Personally, we recommend Data Studio. So that's what I talked about in the beginning where I said Google does one thing well, which is store. Google Analytics does storage really well. Tag Managers for collecting, Data Studios for reporting, and specifically dashboards. It's incredible. It's free, just like Tag Manager is. All these tools are free. And Data Studio will help you to visualize. And basically what you'll do is you'll build a report that is designed to give you answers, not information. And that's a huge mental shift. Most people go into analytics and they just see a bunch of data, right? They see a bunch of numbers, they see a bunch of information. And there is a story there. Everyone has that understanding that, man, if I understood how to read this thing, it would tell me the answer. But most of the time it's not going to be useful at all. That's because it hasn't been set up properly. And there's a lot of stuff that you don't need to see, right? So if you just saw the one little thing you need, it's a lot easier to kind of see the wheat from the chaff. Same thing in Data Studio. So Data Studio, you build a report to answer just this question. So for example, how is my funnel working? What's my webinar show rate? And you just put numbers in there. And then you come to this page that is built to show you, this is how your webinar is performing.
And so is it really going to show you like a funnel, and it's going to
100%.
show you your conversions at the various stages that you've identified, registration, show up, click the button, blah, blah,
100%.
blah. So, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, 100%. It's an amazing tool. Do you want, I can screen share and show you one. You want to see one?
Yeah, we could try that. I've never done it.
I'll try to zoom in because I know we're going to be doing a little split screen here. So,
yeah.
But let me show you I'll give you an example of kind of some things you can do with Data Studio. So I'm going to bring this over and then I'm going to share real quick. All right. So this is Data Studio, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so everybody can kind of see this. So this is like high level stuff, right? So you can say just overview, how, if you have different products, this is a report that was designed to answer from an overview perspective, right? How are things performing? Well, then I can go in and I can say, well, let's look at a particular funnel. This will give you some examples of like a funnel report. And then this will say, okay, well, here's the number of page views. Now remember, this could be built for anything. So registration, show rate, purchases, right? Whatever.
Yeah, whatever you want. Got it.
So you're building your funnels. Well, now I know what my overall conversion rate is. I also know how I'm stepping from step 1 to step 2. That is, I know cart abandonment rate. So I know if something does break sometime, I can figure it out. And what's cool about Data Studio is stuff like this. I can say, oh, just show me my social media examiner traffic or whatever. And you choose different traffic sources or device categories or however else you want to slice and dice by affiliate ID. We just did one for a client recently. It was by affiliate ID for them. And then all of these numbers change to show you just what your Facebook traffic is doing, right? Or your Facebook targeting traffic, if that's how you're tagging it. So that's Data Studio. And again, you can get real specific on what this looks like because it's literally just a blank board. And then you build all these things in. It does not take a long time to do it. The trick is making sure that analytics has the data, right? So because all this data comes from Google Analytics for the most part. So you pull that data and then use Data Studio to make it easier to tell the story. And that's kind of like what we try to do.
When you're using Tag Manager, you're making an easy way to collect the data. The data is being stored in Google Analytics, and then you're looking at the data in Data Studio.
Data Studio, yeah.
So you're not really looking in Analytics very much.
Oddly enough, it's entirely right. Yeah, like there are sometimes I go into Google Analytics. Like I love the source medium report in Google Analytics. I think that's a great report because in one place you see where my traffic's coming from, how much of it am I getting, what actions are they taking, and what are the results of the actions. Like that's all in one report there.
Yeah.
But short of that, Data Studio, I can build anything that I want and get kind of a breakdown. So if I've got a bunch of different funnels, like we've got a program called Win Monthly Pass, which is a little membership program. I have different funnels for that. So I've got a Data Studio report that breaks out each individual funnel and has a combined. So I can see, well, overall, how does this product do? And then by funnel type, how is it doing? And then of course I can break it down by whatever else I want to break it down by traffic source or whatever else. It's Data Studio is amazing. And for me, that's what levels up analytics, because Tag Manager makes sure the analytics is storing a better version of the truth, right? It's kind of like in the beginning, analytics just see page views, but by the end, it sees every behavior that's happening on the site, how far down the page they're scrolling, like all that sort of stuff, right? Then you've got Data Studio that just does a better job of telling the story. Because Google Analytics is great, but it's a super geek. So when it tries to communicate to you, it just spits out a bunch of numbers, and you're like, dude, like you're kind of on the spectrum somewhere. I have no idea what you're saying, right? Data Studio's got people skills. And Data Studio says, hey, listen, here's what analytics is trying to say. It's trying to say, here's how your funnel works, and here's the breakdown. What would you like me to break this down by, right? And that's you can interact with it. So, and it also works with like Google Drive. So you can create something and share this with your team, or have your team create it and share it with you, which is really cool too.
Love it. So we're on step 4 of the 5-step framework. Let's finish
step 4. So right now you can see this is technically the reporting stage. We just saw data, right? So that's 3 steps in. We've planned, we've built, now we've got our reports. Once you have your reports, this is the important step. Step 4, you start to forecast. So instead of always looking back at your marketing, which is what most people are doing, they look back and see what happened last week. And I'm like, okay, what happened? Was that good? I'm not sure. Instead, you market forward and you start saying, okay, next week, we're going to sell $5,000 worth of stuff. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to send 100,000 based on our numbers, right? You're not guessing. You're basing it on your metrics now, your numbers that came back, the story that you now know from Data Studio. And you say, well, based on our story, we're going to have to send 100,000 impressions. 1% are going to click through. Of those, X amount have become leads. Of those, 3 days later, they're going to come in through email and purchase for an average order volume of this. And then that's going to equal our 5,000. So that's your forecast, right? Step 4. After that, you optimize. And that's where you actually just send traffic. Now you send your traffic and you watch, because now you're measuring all of those steps before. That's how you got to the forecast in the first place. And then you just measure it against what you thought was going to happen. And now you'll see, 100,000 impressions. Check. We got 100,000 for our budget. Perfect. Our 1% click. Awesome. Leads. Great. Okay. It's the email. The email was supposed to come within 3 days and they didn't. Something's going on with the email series. Did we make a change? Did somebody not get tagged? Right? Did Infusionsoft crap out? Like that's the stuff you take a look at. For our cases, you can tag the emails with like the day numbers. Like we use Infusionsoft too, so this is really kind of nice. So we can tag in the day number of the email, so we know if it was day 3 or day 4 or day 2 that it came in through. And then again, you can measure it, and then you'll see. And what's cool about it is there's no more of that weird like, God, what the hell happened? What do we do now? Right?
Why'd I lose $2,000 this week?
It's 100, because what you've done, and this goes back to your car analogy, you've built yourself a map, right? So now you've built a map, and now instead of like being pulled over on the side of the road and God knows where, you're pulled over the side of the road and you're like, okay, here's where we made a wrong turn 2 steps back, right? There's another thing up here ahead, because you've got something to kind of guide yourself by. And that's why it's important to be able to measure your marketing in this way. And if you follow those 5 steps, right? Plan, build, report. So plan, most important, plan, build, report, forecast, and then you optimize. And most people try to like throw code on pages and then they go to optimization. And they forget about the rest of the stuff, right? They use the built-in reports that the platforms give them. They don't realize they're talking to Goldilocks when they're thinking they're getting Baby Bear's story, right? And then that's where a lot of the confusion comes from.
So in terms of the fact that we've started this conversation about an evergreen funnel that drives traffic to a webinar that's intended to result in a conversion. Stage 1, planning. What questions do I want to know? What would that be for me?
What do you think?
I want to know what my I want to know how many people are hitting the landing page.
Yep.
I want to know the landing page conversion rate.
Defined as how?
As a percentage, I would think.
But how? But so conversion rate to, because there's a conversion rate, you've got a start and you've got an end, right? So the start is your landing page, and when you say conversion rate, what do you mean?
Well, I would want to know a couple of things. I would want to know how many people are showing up for the live event. I would want to know how many people are watching the replay, and then I would want to know how many people are buying it.
And how many people are, what was the last one?
Buying it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the most important one to begin with is how many people are registering for the thing in the first place.
Yeah. Right? So how many people to the lander?
Yep. So you've got how many people to the lander?
How many registered?
How many people are even starting coming in from Facebook?
Yeah.
Then how many people register?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, with those 2 pieces of information, I now know my conversion rate to registration.
Yeah.
Then, and this is where it goes through now we're in the information stage, right? What information do I need to know? So in order to figure out the conversion rate for show, what do I need to know? I need to know the number of people who show up, right? So now I put that in there, number of people who show up for my webinar. And then it's, okay, number of people who watch the replay, conversion rates, whatever, and then purchases that are coming through. And you always, now you're just dividing out landing page divided by whatever that thing is that you're looking for. So whether it's registrations or purchases, but that's what's really important about how you define stuff, because that's where a lot of the confusion sometimes happens too, is you say, I want to track the conversion rate on my landing pages. I go, great, I track an opt-in for you. You were thinking purchase, right? And so that's when whenever you define stuff, you say, okay, conversion rate defined as this. I want to know people that started here and ended here. And sometimes there's 47 other steps in the middle, and it's still totally cool. Like in that Dave Studio report, I had what we call the core conversion rate. That's kind of what we called it. We say the core conversion rate means the first purchase in the funnel. So when they actually trade $1, that's the core conversion rate for us.
And then would that be from lander sessions through 100%. To the first purchase?
Yep, 100%. So even if there's 37 steps, I don't care. I want to know how many people started, how many people reached core conversion. And what else do I know? I also know all those 37 steps in between, because I have a forecast of how that works for me to get to that, right? So that's why I said like a very simple funnel would be like lander to cart. Typically, I'm going to look at roughly 8 to 12% are going to click through on average, right? There's always outliers on either end. I totally get that. But most of the time, that tends to be the number. And so when I'm looking at that, if it's too high, too good, or if it's horrible, too bad, that's where I know I got to focus around that. For example, we had one where the lander to cart was like 50%. I'm like, oh, what is going on, right? Like, and the problem was my core conversion rate was off. So I wasn't converting what I wanted to at the end of the day. I was thinking 1 to 3%. I think we were like sub 1%. I'm like, okay, something's broken here. Let's go back in. I look at lander to cart. It goes 50 some odd percent. I'm like, okay, that's good, but it's way too good. Like for our forecast, it's 3 times the forecast.
So what you're saying is your cold traffic to lander, that conversion rate to registration was really, really low.
In our case, it was offer directly to cart to sale. So no lead involved here. They weren't opting in. So, but what was happening was they were going from lander to cart, and what I was expecting, let's say 10%, right, to get there. So instead of 1 out of every 10 people, I was getting 5 out of every 10 people to go to the cart. Now that sounds good in the beginning, because you're like, wow, that means a lot of people are interested, except that we went back and we realized that particular sales page, for whatever reason, somebody forgot to put the price on it. So what happened? People were going to the cart, not to buy, but to figure out how much the thing was. Then they were going back to the sales page. Right? And you can actually see that. It's called a flow report. You can see that in Google Analytics too. You can see them actually loop back. And we were like, okay, like that's our problem. So our sales page didn't have pricing. They were going to the cart not to buy, but to find out more information. That's not what the cart is designed to do, because the cart is designed to facilitate payment, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm violating the whole one purpose, one page thing. So I'm like, okay, we got to put the price. Let's explain it down. And sure enough, that dropped down. We didn't have as many people going to the cart, but the people that went to the cart were purchasing, and my cart abandonment rate also came down, and my core conversion rate came within that line that we were looking for.
So when you say lander to cart, you're measuring from lander to adding to cart, not to checking out.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Well, so yes. So starting the checkout process. Exactly right. Yep. To the point where they can put in details. Now in e-commerce, there's a lot of times it's like a Shopify cart, right? Or WooCommerce, there's a multi-stage checkout.
Yeah.
Google Analytics, actually both those platforms are pretty good about this. They have a built-in integration for Google Analytics called Enhanced E-commerce that you can turn on. And you can turn on this thing called Enhanced E-commerce in Google Analytics, and it will show you a funnel. It's like a horizontal funnel, and it'll show you your checkout steps. So it'll say, here's how many people initiated checkout, and then here's how many people went to billing and payment. And you can customize that for whatever your steps are. But you can actually see where in the checkout process things broke, if at all. But you can see how your checkout process. So not only do you see all of the steps of, okay, category to a product detail to an add to cart, and then all the back and forth that happens there. But then there's this whole little separate component of here's how your checkout is working once they decide they do want to move forward. Here's where you can see the drop off. And that's another one of those reports that actually within analytics is pretty good.
So you would use, once they get to cart, you're not using Tag Manager anymore, or you're just saying?
Always using Tag Manager. So to put that in perspective, what you do, remember I said in the beginning, analytics does 3 things natively: collect, store, and report, right? What we're doing, what you kind of do with Tag Manager is you tell analytics, you know what we're going to do? Like, I love you to death, man, but you just are not great at collecting. So you can't collect any more anything. Tag Manager. I want you to listen to Tag Manager for everything. You do what you do well, which is store, buddy. You do that.
Okay.
Tag Manager is going to tell you everything. So now Tag Manager is telling it when it's going through the different stages. And then analytics just responds to Tag Manager goes, okay, cool. And just writes everything down and stores it. And then, they both work incredibly well with that. So Tag Manager has complete visibility over everything that is in the user journey. So, which is why you would want to put it on your Webinar Jam. There's actually a place in Webinar Jam or webinars in the integration code where you just copy paste Tag Manager code in there. Analytics will fire through there. You can also, and this is a huge benefit with Tag Manager, it's not just analytics that it can tell. It can also tell Facebook. It can tell Google Ads. It can put in a Hotjar script. So now what happens is Tag Manager becomes like this one source of truth that all the platforms get at the same time. Instead of having to worry about a Facebook pixel that's on your page, sort of rogue, telling Facebook leads are occurring when they're really not, everything's Tag Manager is telling Google Analytics, hey, a lead just occurred. It also tells Facebook at that same time, hey, a lead just occurred. And now both platforms are getting the same version of the truth at the same time from the same source. So there's a lot less of that he said, she said stuff that happens with all these different measurement platforms. There's huge benefits to Tag Manager.
Yeah, no kidding. So for someone like me with a relatively simple funnel, one product front end offer, an upsell, getting tag, doing the planning, maybe I'm an hour there. Building in Tag Manager, taking into account I haven't used Tag Manager before, is it reasonable to expect that I could get it tagged and built in half a day?
Yeah. I think so the way to do this is Tag Manager is one of those tools that will grow with you, right? So if you look at my Tag Manager and you try to do what I do, you'll just end up being frustrated.
Yeah, but you're at the ninja level.
It's 100%. I'm like 13 levels in the ladder, right? 13 runs up. You're just looking at the ladder going, should I climb it? So what you do is in Tag Manager, you get the basics in place and you can do that really quickly, right? And there's a learning curve, but just, take a course, whether through us or somebody else, learn the basics of it. And pretty quickly you can get page views showing up. Then what will happen is you'll say, what'd be nice to know? Are they even scrolling down? So for example, in a lander, did they not go to the cart because they didn't want my offer? Or did they not go to the cart because they weren't interested in the copy at all and didn't even scroll? They might even know my offer is. So you can tell Tag Manager, hey, report scroll rate. You can technically tell Tag Manager when the button shows up. This is one of my coolest things I love about Tag Manager. When the buy button shows up, let's say you're scrolling in a long form copy. When the buy button shows up for at least 10 seconds in the browser window, then tell Google Analytics they are aware of the offer. Like how that's
that's pretty awesome.
Again, goes back to how. So now instead of just going, well, I don't know, they started on this page, they ended up on this page. Now I can see how they did that or did not do that. And I can go back to my copywriter and say, listen, man, they're not scrolling at all. That offer isn't even showing up. It has nothing to do with our offer. So don't think that. It's somewhere in the headline of the lead copy because they're not even seeing the offer. Or it's, hey, they're seeing the offer and they're not clicking. So let's maybe work on the offer. Like we got them to consider, right? So, but they're not. So let's focus on that. And now you can tweak your copy again, based on the story that technically, even though it's coming from numbers, right? I mean, the story is numbers, but it's behaviors that the users are leaving behind. It's their story, right? It's the users kind of writing me the story saying, hey, here's what we think about your sales page. Here's how we're using it. And I'm kind of reading that going, yeah, it's exactly what I want you to do. Or, whoa, that is not at all what I want. Let me go fix that. So that's, I mean, it's huge benefit. But to get back to the point of Tag Manager, basics, no problem. I think you can get that within a half day. Then you'll start leveling up. And that's where you just put in a little bit each day and be like, oh, I want to add button clicks now. Now I want to add scroll rate. Now I want to add video interaction. And then you'll look back a year from now, you'll be like, holy cow, how did I live without this stuff? And then the visibility you'll get is amazing.
Instead of having a week where I blow through $2,000, I can, throw a couple $100 of this a week to buy me some data to figure out where did it break. And then once I fixed it, I can ramp back up again.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
All right, man. Very cool. So for Chris, for people who want to learn more about your stuff, where do they go?
Sure. Yeah. Measurementmarketing.io is our site. And if you go to measurementmarketing.io/bright-ideas, I've got a UTM traffic tracker that's there for you. So it's a little toolkit, because I think the biggest mistake that even if you have this stuff set up, most people where they screw up from a marketing standpoint is they don't track the traffic properly in the first place. So there's something called UTM parameters that you need to add to all of your different links. So you know if they came from Facebook or from an email, for example. And then you can, and the trick is, number one, knowing to even use those. But number two is knowing, again, it's the how. It's the structure that you use and sort of the formulas that how do you define those different things? And when you know that, your traffic starts telling a better story. So for us, I can go into my analytics and I can say, well, I'm going to go look in my win campaign for like my win courses. And I can say, what traffic sources are generating traffic for the purpose of selling wins? and I can go in and see, oh, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's LinkedIn, there's whatever. Then I can click into those traffic sources and get very specific details of what ads are causing what. So I have a total story of how my traffic, what results are being attributed to whatever traffic source. But if I did not tag that properly in the first place, without knowing my traffic sources, like, what are you going to do? You don't know kind of where they came from. So super important thing. And that's a totally free tool that anybody can use. Has a video on how to use it. So that's what I recommend people go to. So measuremarketing.io/bright-ideas.
And then if I want to go ahead and which of your courses, given the problem that I want to solve, which of the courses would be the most beneficial for me?
Do you have is it just you or do you have a team?
I have a team for this stuff, because I like learning this stuff. I'll probably do it initially.
So I'll give you two options. We have so we've got individual win courses that are literally designed to get you using these tools. I don't care if you know about some backwater report in Google Analytics of where it is and what it does, because you're probably never going to use most of the reports back there. But what I do care about is you're tagging your traffic and you're getting results. So we create these little win courses that are designed to get you moving in these specific topics, right? Very, very focused, easy to get through and fast. Tag Manager, Analytics, Data Studio, the whole thing's back there. We have something called Win Monthly Pass that gives you access to all of those courses. So I'd recommend, if you're kind of a solo freelancer style, that's what I'd recommend that you do. Okay. There is a level above that. And that's why I was asking about teams. It's called the Measurement Marketing Academy. The Academy is made for teams, because somebody's going to be more of a strategist when you're a team. Somebody's going to be more of the implementer. Somebody's going to be more responsible for building reports. And these are normally not the same person. Yeah. So the Academy's got 4 separate logins, and it's a lot more robust. It has group coaching every week. You can talk with the instructors live on calls. And there's a whole, workshop. You just type in questions and it spits out videos to say, here's how you do this thing. So it's a lot more robust. And so if you have a team that you need to learn this, I'd say Measurement Marketing Academy. But otherwise, Win Monthly Pass is absolutely going to be there and get you started to make sure at least get the basics down. Okay. And Academy comes with all the Win courses anyway. So
yeah, cool. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. I learned a great deal, and I have a funnel to fix. So
sounds good, man. Good luck with it. Let us know if we can help.
All right.